because it's hard to share things, that is what makes you strong.
Yeah.
Is being able to share them and push through that,
Yeah. Would you say that like quarantining and like being at home has helped you like self-reflect on that?
That is a very good question. Give me a second to think about that.
Okay, because I'll bounce off that because like for me it was maybe I didn't acknowledge the loss as much before or seeing my mom at a lower point.
Yeah.
But then when you have time to yourself and you have nothing to do and you're bored and you get with your thoughts. That's what people say when you're bored and you're lonely, you get with your thoughts.
Yeah.
You kind of
dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Hello guys, welcome back to I Can Relate. Today in the studio it's me, Chidera.
And Devin Lejean.
And Leah Zam.
And Calvin Werner.
So today we're going to be talking a lot about loss and even grief. Recently, we know our community has faced a lot of loss when it comes to students and people and so many other situations within our lives. And I think that we all decided that this would be a really important episode to just sit down and talk about loss, how to get over loss, how to deal with grief, and how to move on from these situations.
Absolutely. Loss is something that everyone experiences, especially this past year. We had COVID-19. There was so much loss when it comes to even being around your friends. You lost the opportunity. Work, so many people are jobless now, even to this day. And it's like, what really is lost to you all? What does that mean?
So that's a really good question. And I feel like loss, and I think we were talking about this the other day, has so many different layers to it. But I feel like for me, as an individual, loss means something, I think something that is so normal in my everyday life, because I think that's what is the biggest impact when it comes to loss, something like a friend, a job, school, something that I do every day or I see every day, and it's gone.
Yes, like the loss of something that's very meaningful to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think that emotional aspect is the most important thing. Anyone can die or anything can, end and it won't matter to you, but it's being emotionally connected to it that is what matters most and what impacts you,
Absolutely. And I feel like this past period of time with COVID-19, I felt like for a second I lost a sense of self, being so secluded from everyone else. I felt like I could literally this is over exaggerated, but die in my own room. Being so this is my own setting.
And definitely with that as well, branching off of that, I think last year was difficult for everyone, but especially for individuals who are so used to going out and just enjoying everything possible. And I wouldn't really call myself a homebody. I'm definitely not that as an individual. So I completely agree with you, Chidera. Having to be home so often and just be in my room or be in my house was kind of like a culture shock for me in a sense, because that's just not something I'm used to, or my family in general, honestly.
Yeah, and it's a loss of self, because when you're by yourself for so long and you're not in your normal setting, you kind of lose who you are, what you enjoy, or what you would normally do in a day.
Yeah, I was going to kind of touch on that same point is, a lot of the things that make up who we are, whether it's, identity markers or things that we're interested in, were kind of taken away from us. People who, let's say, do sports, and that's just their entire lives, that's gone. Imagine that for a whole year,
Yeah.
And we can go on and on about the different effects of the pandemic, but specifically in our community, we had a loss that we experienced. If one of you guys want to talk about that?
Yes, so this past week or so, a student at Lee Summit West actually died in a car accident. He was a friend to many, an acquaintance of Devin and ours. And I feel like it was such a moment of, whoa, our senior
reality
class,
shock.
yes, we are not invincible. I feel like, I don't know, Devin, could you agree with me in that?
Yeah,
sense
absolutely.
That, it just felt like our reality just froze for a second. We're like, whoa, we're actually, it made me feel like I'm actually alive right now.
Yeah.
I don't know, what do you think?
So I think
So this past couple of weeks, or this past week, a student in our community passed away, and he died from a car accident. And I know for myself, it felt like, whoa. It was, I just remember hearing that news and being so shocked, so scared, so wow. It was just so crazy to me. And death is something that's inevitable. It's something that we're all going to deal with. But when it's like right now, it almost feels like our prime time
Yeah,
of just like
absolutely.
experiencing life.
And I feel like, especially after graduation, which I think is a really important thing to bring up, you know, I feel like after graduation, especially after this year for seniors, it was such a hard and difficult time. And then to be finally done, like, oh my God, we like did this year, we're over, it's on to the next thing. Everyone's excited for college, everyone's excited for summer. And then this loss happened, and it's like, oh, you know, you kind of like brings you back to reality for a little bit. Because I definitely completely agree that, talking for myself from an individual standpoint, you know, I was definitely on like cloud nine and still am, you know, but still, you know, after graduation, after reading graduation, and after doing all these amazing things, and seeing the situation happen and seeing how much it affected our community, I was like, oh wow, like, you know, I should probably take a second to just chill out for a little bit and see, you know, tell my friends I love them and be appreciative for the people I have, because these situations kind of put you back to reality a little bit.
Right. And I love what you just said about telling everyone you love them and stuff. I was just gonna ask, like, what would you guys do experiencing such a big loss like that? I know for myself, this individual I wasn't necessarily super close with, but when it comes to people who are like your loved ones,
Yeah.
a part of your clan, your community, what do you do to deal with that?
I think the most important thing to remember is that there's no right way, and everyone
Yeah.
does it differently.
Absolutely.
And a lot of aspects come into that, whether it's culture, how you were raised, just like you as an individual also plays a part in that.
Yeah.
But generally, I always have to like take myself back. I need some time to either, I don't even need to see my family members, to be honest. I just
Yeah.
need my own space.
Yeah, and I definitely think that we kind of view things or think of, you know, the way there's like a way we're supposed to respond to death,
Yeah.
or just any tragic event, but death
Mhm.
specifically, you know, you have to cry, you have to
Yes,
bawl out,
absolutely.
you have to fall on the floor and all that,
Yes.
and that's just really not the way that a lot of people respond
Mhm.
to
Yes.
anything, you know. I
Yeah.
just really think it's important to sort of in that stigma or like that social expectation, you know, and really
Absolutely, yeah.
accept that this is something that happens
Yeah.
to everyone. This is
Acknowledging
something-
it, yeah.
exactly.
Absolutely.
It's just something that
Yes.
you're going to have to deal with, whether it's like a loved one or friend or whatever, and, you know, really figure out what that looks like for you and accept that, you know.
Absolutely, and something that just reminded me of, and Nelly, you touched on this earlier with losing your sense of self. I love the Red Table Talk on Facebook with Willow Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith, and Jada Pinkett Smith's mom. And they just released a past episode where Willow Smith was interviewing Paris Jackson, Michael Jackson's daughter.
Yeah.
And she was kind of talking to her about her loss with her dad, and, you know, she was like 12 years old at the time, so
Yeah.
going through puberty and all this stuff without having her dad, who was her
Yes.
primary parent. She didn't live with her mom. She didn't, you know. So it was just so interesting seeing how people are dealing with loss, but in the spotlight. You know, you have
Yeah.
millions of people who are watching you deal with that loss. I can't even imagine how hard that must be, because dealing with loss alone and not having 10 million people look at you is already hard enough. So
Yeah.
having this huge platform where you're having to, you know,
Yeah.
just, I don't know, you know.
You have to like give updates on how what you're
Yes,
doing, what you're
exactly.
how you're
Yeah.
feeling, and not only that, you're being judged throughout everything you do. Like, why'd you go get coffee because
Yeah.
your dad just like, you know, it's like you're being watched like
It's
a hawk.
exactly. It's like, why are you still continuing to live your life? Almost, it seems like, are we not supposed to get better?
I feel
Yeah.
like something else about grief and loss that a lot of people don't speak about is that it kind of affects everyone. So, for example, Dara, you keep talking about, you know, this person that we lost recently. You know, I wasn't super close with. Dara wasn't super close with. We obviously knew this individual. But it really hurts to see some of our closer friends who were closer with that person be so hurt and be so sad, because these are people who we love very much, and like obviously we're so sad that this person, you know, lost their life. But just seeing our friends who are normally like super happy, like funny, outgoing individuals be so hurt and kind of see a different side of them. You know, when it comes to grief and loss, there's so many layers and there's so many aspects to it. And really, I think, Calvin, you mentioned this the other day, like you can't sit down and talk about everything when it comes to these situations, because
And
it's so much.
we should get into those layers.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you can experience loss indirectly. I
Absolutely.
remember when a fellow debate member
Mhm.
passed away.
Yeah.
A great friend to Devin.
Mhm.
It's our sophomore year. I wasn't necessarily close with the individual, but I was one of Devin's best friends.
Yeah.
You know, seeing someone who's super close to you experience such a
Mhm.
great loss, it's
Yeah.
like, what are my emotions in this sense?
Yes.
How do I help this individual deal with loss? But I
Mhm.
also feel like I'm somewhat dealing with the loss.
Yeah.
Yeah, going off of that, the friend that we lost that we weren't exactly that close to, but we're acquaintance with, or
Yeah.
just seen him
Mhm.
in general. Like, I didn't know him at all. I didn't know who he was before this,
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
still went to his memorial site, and the fact that he was a student that, you know, I could have known, or the fact that he was in our school.
Yeah.
Like, at one point we were in the same building
Mhm.
for a certain amount of time. I still went to the site and cried and let out
Mhm.
emotions, whether that was, well, it was for his loss because that's what bring it there, but
Yeah.
that may not be because, you know, like, we had a
Yeah.
close relation.
Exactly.
And I love that you did that, because for some reason I feel like loss, and at the end of the day, brings all of us together. It makes all of us
Absolutely.
feel connected
Yeah.
at the end of the day. Even though you weren't necessarily best friends with him, you still feel some sort of connection with that individual,
Mhm.
because you know you are in the same community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think something that is great about the community that we live in is a lot of people are very intertwined. You know, there's so many people from so many different schools and so many different areas within this place that we live in who know each other. And I think not only that, it's just dealing with loss a few years ago, you know, like the situation that Dara just brought up, it helps me help others with their loss and their grief that they're going through, because that was a very difficult time for me, especially being so young, and then kind of I'm an individual that deals with my issues on my own, so kind of going through that, not on my own as if I didn't have anyone there, because I did, but like dealing with those big problems by myself, and then being able to understand like what to do and what not to do. And I think something that I understood like when the situation happened was like, Devin, you cannot allow your emotions to like kind of be built up and kept in, because that's kind of who I am as an individual. And I think that was something that's really important for everyone to know, like, it's okay to cry. It's okay to also be happy. Like Calvin was saying, like, not happy that someone is lost, but like Calvin said earlier, there's so many different ways to deal with grief and loss, and deal with those ways that you feel is best. And I think that's what's really important, but like the biggest thing is deal with them.
Yes, I think that death is definitely, you know, it has a ripple effect, like
Yeah.
you guys were saying, and then, you know, kind of to touch on what Devin was saying, it can also really be a proxy for human connection and
Mhm.
perspective, you
Yeah.
know. You know, while death is tragic, it also is the beginning, you know. Everything that dies, there's also a
Mhm.
birth, you know, and
Mhm.
things change. And, you know, like I said, while it is sad, it really can show us or teach us to be grateful for the connections that we do have, and to, you know, fortify those connections
Yeah.
more. So.
And I think something that we're kind of touching on a little bit, but we're not using this word, is just the stigma around grief, loss, and death. You know, exactly what you said earlier, Calvin. I think this was amazing that a lot of people think that there are like set ways to deal with death, you know, these set ideas. And that's just not, you know, accurate. There's so many different ways to not only deal with grief and loss, but so many other aspects of human life that, you know, it's not a cookie cutter, oh, you do this and you do this and you do this. And, you know, I think I said this in our last meeting that, you know, grief, loss, and these situations are not linear. There's a lot of, you know, being good one day and the next day you feel horrible, or being great for a month and then one day you just feel kind of different. You know, there's so many different ways to deal with these issues and
Or
problems.
something triggers that to where you're like,
Absolutely.
you remember a loss, or you remember something that they may have done, and then
Mhm.
you go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
I also think that the type of death, there's a huge stigma around that, you know. Whether
absolutely.
it's, you know, being killed, killing yourself,
Mhm.
you know, dying of a
Mhm.
certain medical. I feel like there's a lot of, or a lack of conversation around that, and like a lot of judgment, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not even that, but there's even a stigma around the way certain genders deal with loss.
Mhm.
We want men to be aggressive if they don't win a game or
Yeah,
something,
yeah, yeah.
get mad.
Mhm.
We want it. That's not necessarily what we want, but
Yeah.
that's how society sees men
Mhm.
as getting
Mhm.
as dealing with your emotions.
Yeah.
Like,
you
men
know?
don't cry type of
Yes,
stuff.
and
Yeah.
whereas
Absolutely.
women, we think they need to, they're like, oh, we're so sad, but
Mhm.
it's, sometimes it can be the complete opposite.
Absolutely.
And I think that it just comes down to how you manage your emotions, to me, I feel like.
Mhm.
And I feel like there should not be a cookie cutter, you touched on this, Devin, there is not a cookie cutter way to
deal with these issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And not only the way you deal with your emotions, the way you were raised and where you were raised
Yeah,
plays an aspect into
absolutely,
that as to
absolutely.
how much you're willing to share
Yeah.
or how you're gonna grieve.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And Devin, I love how you said that you like to deal with your emotions on your own, but you know that you still have a community at the end
Absolutely,
of the day that you can reach
yeah,
out to.
yeah.
So it's not like you are trying to, like,
Shield myself.
yes,
and, yeah.
but it's like you need to take a step back
Mhm.
and reevaluate, and that's
Yeah.
not a problem. You know, if you're going through an issue, I know sometimes for myself, it's taking me. I'm 18 years old now. It's taken me probably these last 2 years. I feel like I've
Yeah.
spent so much time learning how to open up and like,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
pull down barriers.
Absolutely.
Even by doing this, understanding my voice. You know,
Mhm.
and I think that that's what everyone needs to just understand that they understand their power.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think with that, like, understanding your power is also understanding yourself. Growing up, I, am a very strong woman, and situations that I've dealt with are kind of different than others, and it's allowed me to understand that, like, yes, I'm strong, and yes, I'm confident, but, like, it's also okay to be emotional. And, once again, like, I think, Calvin, you also were touching on this the last meeting, like, when it comes to loss in these situations, there's also so much good that comes from them. And I think, kind of coming from personal perspective, when that situation happened to me my sophomore year, my really close friend happened to die, it allowed me to find a different aspect of myself, and find a different perspective and understand, like, this is, because I've never really dealt with loss like that before.
Mhm.
So being able to understand and to grow from that situation was, obviously, I wish, like, that situation never happened, but because it did happen, that's something I cannot change and will never be able to change. It allowed me to see a different side of myself and understand that, okay, like, if I got through this, I can get through anything else, honestly.
I feel like we all had that moment. Like, for me, that moment was maybe 2-3 years ago where I had never dealt with loss, but then I dealt with it 3-4 times in a row. It was
Mhm.
literally one
Yeah.
somebody passes, all different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
One was through medically.
Yeah.
One was through, we're not really sure about the other one, but
Mhm.
just having it having to never deal with it, but knowing that it was a thing.
Yeah.
I was always aware that it's a possibility. It's bound to
Mhm.
happen.
Mhm.
But having to deal with it repetitively, I kind of realized, like, listen, I was able to show my emotions, whether
Yeah.
in the way that I deal, which for me personally is like you, which
Mhm.
where I'm to myself, and if I need some time, I like go on a walk. Like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
But I was able to be there for friends and family when they
Mhm.
were literally at their lowest point.
Yeah.
Right.
So seeing that
Which
you
is
can do that,
amazing.
yeah.
And can you walk us through your emotions, like through that process? You're facing loss after loss after
Yeah.
loss. So is it like that first one? It's like whoa, and then by the third one, are you just like I'm used to this, or is it still like
Yeah.
every single
Yeah.
time?
For me, and this can be different with, like we've said so many times, it can be different for everyone. For me, it was like that first loss was, whoa, like he's gone. Well, he didn't live with us, so it was more like he's a close family member. So you're
Mhm.
like, wow, he's really gone. He was supposed to. Then you start thinking about their life, what they were supposed to start
Yeah.
doing. He
Mhm.
was making plans to come move with us. He wanted to get married.
Yeah.
You know what his plans were. Then the second person who passed was actually that person's mother, and she passed from cancer. And we were sitting back and thinking, and she's like, she just got diagnosed with cancer, and then her son passed away, and she's like, I can't feel the pain
Yeah.
of cancer. I can't, it's not getting to me.
Mhm.
And then we're like, now she's gone, and my mom was very close to her
Yeah.
because she was doing all the appointments and everything. So obviously I had to get a sense of, like, now it's your turn to be a leader. Mom's
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
So then you build another wall. This
Mhm.
was with my personal situation. So then I would be more hands-on with the kids, help them get ready,
Yeah.
get them ready for school.
Mhm.
I personally didn't go to school I didn't go for a week when I had the first person pass away, but I didn't cry. That was a big thing. But then when I went to school, I just walked in and I saw a teacher and I just teared up.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that was it for me.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then that was it, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for sharing
that was really
Ashley.
good.
You're
Thank
very
you for
strong
that. Absolutely.
And I just love how that first time it's so shocking, but
Mhm.
you took on that leader position,
Yeah.
seeing what your mom's going through, and knowing that you can still make an impact. And impact
Absolutely.
your mom. That's
Yeah.
so wonderful.
Yeah, even now I'm sitting here crying and I'm laughing at it because I know I said
Yeah.
at the meeting, I was like, listen, you guys, I am a crybaby.
Me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
like I can see you tearing up, but I hate crying in front of
Yeah.
people. So
See, that
yeah.
makes you strong,
Mhm.
being
Mhm.
vulnerable. And that's exactly what loss is about. That we
Absolutely.
can all be vulnerable together,
Mhm.
and that's
Mhm.
what builds community. That's
Yeah.
what moves people
Yeah.
to make a change, feel heard.
And once again, I think it goes back to like kind of breaking down barriers within yourself, because you know, knowing Dara and even knowing some things that you've said, it's probably, I think
Yeah.
for all of us, even I can, tell me if I'm wrong, can speak for everyone at this table, it's probably difficult for us to show our emotions, because knowing you guys, especially knowing Dara and Calvin for so long, you guys just are such strong and like confident individuals, and that's the words I think of when I think of you guys. So being able to cry and being able to be emotional and being able to show that within this podcast and other aspects of life, I think is very strong, and it's a different feeling. You know, I remember when that situation happened once again when I was younger, and I had to be like, you know what, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be emotional, it's okay to show your emotions. You're not a weak individual. And I think once again, going back to the cultural and stigma of that, you know, sadly through a lot of cultures, a lot of families, emotions are seen as like a weak feeling and like a weak part of you, and in reality it's not. I think people who are able to cry and able to show that, and that's something that Dara's been able to teach me, is you're strong, you're a very strong individual, and that's very important to show that side of you.
I could not agree more. Growing up, and as a kid, I guess, I was
Mhm.
very much, you know, emotionally intelligent, and
Yeah.
I was a crybaby and stuff, and obviously that's okay, but
Mhm.
culture and community and where I grew up,
Yeah.
obviously that wasn't, you know, the social norm.
It's not
And
accepted.
Yeah.
It really wasn't accepted.
Yeah.
And I had to train myself to become this very cold individual that I
Mhm.
still sometimes deal with now. It's just
Yeah.
being like cold
Mhm.
and, you know, like really fighting my feelings. And
Mhm.
it's taken me, I feel like I've been working on this for a very long time, and I have gotten a lot better of like opening up to people
Mhm.
and being vulnerable, and I found strength in that, which
Yeah.
has happened, I want to say about 1 or 2 years ago, very recently, is,
Mhm.
you know, learning strength and vulnerability, like you said, and knowing that, you know, because it's hard to share things,
Mhm.
that is what makes you strong. is
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
able to share them and push
Mhm.
through that, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, would you say that like quarantining and like being at home has helped you like self-reflect on that?
That is a very good question. Give me a second to think about that.
Okay, because I'll bounce off that, because like for me it was, maybe I didn't acknowledge the loss as much before, or
Mhm.
seeing my mom at a lower point.
Yeah.
But then when you have time to yourself and you have nothing to do and you're bored and you get with your thoughts, that's what
Mhm.
people say, when you're bored and you know you're lonely, you get with
Yeah.
your thoughts.
Yeah.
You kind
It's
of,
dangerous.
yeah, it's dangerous because you go into like an emotional, like a change, because you want to continue to build on like, okay, why did I deal with it like that? Like I do that all the time. I self-reflect on things that I've done in elementary school, like the way I said something to a teacher,
Yes,
like, oh,
like
you
for
should,
real.
yeah. So when I'm alone, that's what I got into. But
Mhm.
during, you know, quarantining, being home, I tended to like to be more by myself in a
Mhm.
sense. But when I knew I had people downstairs.
Yeah.
Like there's like 7 people downstairs to come
Yeah.
talk to.
Mhm.
But just having that self-reflection and kind of seeing and learning off, okay, that's the type of griever you are, you know? You kind of like, you put up a front until someone shows like the tiniest
Mhm.
bit of like, hey, are you okay? And then
Yeah,
you
it's
fall.
false.
Yes.
That question
False.
is gets me every time.
Yes. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Immediately.
No,
Yeah,
like,
you just start
I'm
crying.
not okay.
But Calvin, what you just said was, I think, really important. Talking about being able to let your guard down with other people. I think it's also extremely difficult to, when someone who you lost, and that was your person, to be able to like talk to you
Yeah.
about these issues and these problems, and then they're gone. And I think that can also go for like many different relationships and aspects. I think intimate relationships with a boyfriend or girlfriend, a parent who's passed away, so many different situations with that, and like being able to open up to those people and they're not there anymore, I think is such a hard situation to go through, and that's something I've definitely experienced. But I think with that, it makes you say, okay, like this person isn't there anymore. I can't speak to them about what's going on with me, but it's important to know that like I can do that with this person, that I can do it with anyone else that I feel comfortable with,
Yeah.
and I think that's really important.
And what that's reminding me of, just like you open up to someone and they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
It's like widows, you know.
Yeah.
You are
Yeah.
sharing your life experience with an
Mhm.
individual that you love so much, and
Absolutely.
then they're not there anymore. So
Mhm.
it's like understanding that you still need to build a community and like rise from the ashes of
Yeah.
despair.
Like the Phoenix,
Yes, that's not funny. I don't know what happened, but literally, and just build your own community back up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And even if, like, let's say that person was and you feel completely alone or you can't talk to, like, a close family member or friend because of the situation, just knowing that you can find comfort in literally, like, talking to a coffee barista. Like, just having...
Yeah.
Or talking to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spending time with
Or
yourself.
journaling. Yeah, like journaling.
Journaling. Oh my goodness. One time I sat at Post Coffee and I wrote 17 pages of just journaling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All at once.
Mhm.
And it's just, that's my form of self-expression. And I think that's what people need. So
Yeah.
I think something that anyone and everyone who's experiencing a loss needs to ask themselves.
Yeah.
Who are your people? Who's
Yeah.
your community?
Yeah.
Who are you turning to? Who or what?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Whether that be journaling, whether that be
Or your dog.
And if you don't, and I feel like this is a big thing, if you don't have close friends or you feel like you don't, I definitely would say strive for that. Strive to go find that because, you know, I think I am very blessed that I've had had a really good friend groups throughout my life, and I think that's so important. And you know, I feel like as we get older, life kind of hits you, and it's like so many. I feel like friends, and especially for women, kind of come to the bottom of the totem pole for us. And I think find the people that you love, find the people that you can be close with, and that doesn't just have to be a friend. It can be a mom and dad or whoever, because it's cool to sit back here and talk to yourself and talk about your issues with yourself and, you know, dissect. But at the end of the day, I think it's also really important and even more impactful to go find someone else who has a different opinion and a different perspective.
Especially when you've been, like you were just saying, you're at a situation where you feel like, or you really truly believe that I do not have someone I could talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you've been at a point in life where you're like, hey, you know, like, I wish I had this right now, that's like the other door. One door closes, the other door opens. This is your other door opening. You need to go
Absolutely.
be able to try. Not everyone's going to work. Don't think like the first person you look at, you're going to like spill your whole life guts to and
Absolutely.
everything.
Exactly.
But you can work towards a relationship like that, so you know later on when this does happen, you know, I've built a relationship to where I can talk to someone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Snowballs are dangerous, y'all. Like, do not let your feelings snowball up. Do not let them fester. Do not
Absolutely.
let them
Yes.
build up.
Absolutely.
It is
It's
Yes.
extremely
not a fun experience.
dangerous. I know this from personal experience.
Mhm.
I've dealt with this for years.
It is
Do not
deadly.
let
Yeah.
it is deadly, truly. Yeah, just don't. It's never worth
Exactly. And it's so important to remember that dealing with loss, dealing with your emotions is not just a female thing. It's
Absolutely
it's a,
not.
It's a human,
Everyone
it's not
thing.
even a
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
thing. Like,
Even
oh,
animals
dogs are
feel
dogs.
it.
This is just an experience of being able to experience things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
feel like almost every living creature.
Yes,
Mhm.
Yeah.
experience.
it's so important also to remember that there's not a way to deal with your emotions.
Mhm.
Never let anyone
Mhm.
tell you how to express
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's no expectations when it comes to dealing with loss,
Yeah.
dealing with grief, but there is an expectation to express yourself.
And I
in
will
those
say this,
situations.
that, you know, since we're talking to people about what's going on with us, you know, there's so many hotlines and so many places that you can go to. LS Cares has like amazing opportunities to sit down and discuss with people. You know, call people on the phone. There's so many hotlines for issues and situations that you may be going through. You know, I think therapy, I firmly believe in therapy. I think that, I know that's not always accessible for people, but I definitely think that, you know, if you're capable of affording that and doing that, I absolutely say, you know, go do that. Go talk to someone, especially if you don't feel like you can talk to anyone that's maybe in your circle at this moment.
Right. And I feel like a lot of times when dealing with these issues, it's easier said than done because I'm thinking about if I were to deal with such a great loss tomorrow. And you know, that's
Mhm.
possible. That's
Yeah.
possible.
Absolutely.
I feel like in those moments, those first couple of even minutes after, seconds after, days after,
Mhm.
you're going to want to feel sheltered. Some people may want to feel sheltered. I know
Yeah.
for myself, I need to step back,
Mhm.
take a few days
Yeah.
to myself to just
Absolutely.
self-reflect on the circumstances, you know?
Mhm.
So it's not like tomorrow you need to be up here creating an organization for
No.
Yeah.
this situation or that.
Go
But
building
it's
up the
just-
memorial or
Yes,
something. Yeah.
but it's just about actually dealing with your emotions
Mhm.
and not just setting them aside, and then years later you're having such bad issues with all of your other relationships because
Mhm.
you let a circumstance tear you down.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, there, as a final word to you guys, there's no timeline, there's no sort of book you're supposed to read,
Yeah.
there is no whatever stages of grief. It is your experience, this is your grief, this is
Absolutely.
your loss. You know, don't feel any certain type of way that you have to feel or be better by this amount of time or anything. You know, this is truly about that personal experience, you
Yes.
know, and your experience with that person, you know, so.
Yeah, the one thing that I could think of that I would want everyone to know or relate to is just know you're not alone. Like, this isn't just
Absolutely.
you, or
Absolutely.
even if it's for that person, or just in general, you're not the only one dealing or that has dealt with loss. Go to someone that maybe has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess for, that's really cool. My kind of word of advice would be to really just sit down with yourself and talk to yourself and say, like, what's going on with
Introspection.
me? Yeah,
Yeah.
because I feel like, once again, life is moving so fast, life is moving so quickly. You have to sit down with yourself sometimes and kind of say, like, what's going on with me?
Yes, yes. You are not alone.
Absolutely.
You
Period.
are
Mhm.
not alone.
Yeah.
When it comes to loss and grief, it's something that we all deal with at the end of the day. It's something that it's inevitable, just like
Yeah.
death.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, it can build us up, make our community stronger, make us feel heard,
Yeah.
feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing right now is amazing. Even right now,
Yeah.
having this conversation.
And have more conversations at home.
Absolutely.
The
With
Yeah.
families.
conversations
Yes.
need to continue.
Yes.
The conversations need to continue. When it comes to the individual in our community that passed, our hearts go out to each and every person
Yes.
who was impacted by that.
Mm-hmm.
Each and every person who knew that fellow,
Yeah.
that individual.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for
Thanks,
listening
everyone.
today. I think
Thank
this was
you.
such a great conversation talking about loss, how we deal with loss, what it means to us, how we can bounce back,
Yeah.
rise from the ashes,
Yeah.
and be our best selves. So thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. It's Dara,
Devin.
Aaliyah.
And Calvin.
and this is I Can Relate.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
The I Can Relate podcast is made possible by a private donation in the generosity of Lee Summit Cares. Lee Summit Cares is a nonprofit coalition that seeks to mobilize community partners to develop a culture of physical and mental wellness for Lee Summit youth and families that inspires positive, healthy choices. For more information about Lee Summit Cares, visit lscares.org. This podcast is available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, or most any of your favorite podcast apps. You can also find us at icanrelate.fredcast.com. I Can Relate is a production of Fredcast. Think, speak, act.